Alright guys, so in this section and the next section I want to talk about something called the App Starter, which is a graphical interface where we can create mobile apps, or at least the UI. We can create buttons and navigation, form elements, things like that. And once we finish with the App Starter, and we can take a look at our code and we can modify it. And when you use the App Starter, it implements something called the App Framework, and it's actually a JavaScript library, much like jQuery Mobile. It's a mobile JavaScript library, and we can actually set up our pages in one document, like we could with a single page template in jQuery Mobile. So the first thing to do is go to our XDK console. And what we want to do is create a new app. So we want to click on this. Let's get this out of here. Click on this plus sign to create a new app. And we're going to leave the default called App Starter. And I'm just going to call this project Edgewonics. And I'm going to launch the App Starter. And you should be signed in as well. Alright, so this is what it gives us. Pretty much a blank canvas. We have a button, a Hello World button, and a home button down here. So what I'd like to do is add a couple pages, and I want to add some links down here, some more icons. And we're going to just use this as a base, and we'll have different pages where in future sections we can implement whatever we're going to do, some of the APIs or what have you. So I'm going to create another page, and I'm going to call this geolocation, and I'm going to give it an ID of geolocation, and I'm going to click apply. So that gives us another page here. And next I'm going to create another page, and I'm going to call this camera with the ID of camera. Alright, so just ignore that. So we have our main page, our geolocation page, and our camera page. Alright, so let's get rid of this Hello World button. We can just click, make sure you highlight it and click delete. And let's add a container, and in that container we want to add a list, and this is going to be our main menu. So item 1, item 2, let's change this to geolocation, and let's change this to camera. Okay, so let's add some, I want to add a couple icons down in the footer. So if we click on nav and we click on the default footer, you can see here we have a home which has an icon of a house, and the page is main. So let's add another one called geolocation, and we can choose from a bunch of different icons. We want the, let's see, I think there's a location, here we go. And we want that to go to the geolocation page. We'll do the same with the camera. Alright, so if we click on apply, now we have these nice icons in our footer. And up here we can actually change to see what it'll look like with different themes and on different devices. So that's Android Dark, Android Light, Windows 8, and we're just using the default, which is iOS. So that's all for now. We can always come back to this later, but let's just start with this as a shell. I'm going to click save. Alright, so it says application created successfully, and now we come back to our XDK, and this, I don't know how this thing keeps popping up. Now this is on an iPad, and you can see we have a side menu that we can add if we want to. If we want this to be functional on an iPad. But we're going to stick to the smartphone devices for now. And you can see now we have our links, we have our icons. If we click, now it's not functioning, we're not pointing to the pages here, but the footer, if you remember, we did actually put in the page. So I can click camera, take us to the camera page. So we have to now work on this list and make sure that it brings us to the page. So we're going to switch to the editor. And if we go to index.html, alright, so maybe I should try to explain this, but you know what? I don't want to use this editor. I prefer to use NetBeans. So I guess I should show you how to set that up right now. So let's open up NetBeans. So what we want to do is create a new project. And by default, we're just going to choose PHP. It really doesn't matter. It just has to do with text hinting and stuff like that. And what we want to do is we have the actual app, the Eduonix app that we just created. It's going to be on our local machine, wherever we chose to put the XDK directory, which I believe is in our C drive, XDK. And you can see all the demo apps, and then at the bottom, this me39.eduonix is the app that we just created. And then if we look inside of it, there's a version number, and inside of that is our structure. Our index file is going to be there, CSS, JS, plugins. So we want to use this folder, the version number, as our project folder. Our project name, we'll just say Eduonix XDK, and we'll choose to put our NetBeans metadata folder somewhere else. Alright, that looks good. So now over here, let's close that test app. Now we have all our files. So if we open up our index.html, here it is. So we can actually just use this for the emulator. So we can change anything in NetBeans, and we can visualize, we can see it on this. We can test it on this emulator. So let's see, there's a couple things I want to do. First thing, let's point those pages. So here is where our two navigation links are. So all we need to do here is point to the correct ID. So if we look at, we have a div with the class of panel, and panels in our case are going to be the different pages. That has a title of geolocation, has an ID of geolocation. So this is what we want. So let's copy that and paste that right in there. And then we want our camera page. So copy that, paste that in. We can save that and go back to our emulator and just click on, we don't even have to reload the page, we can just click on this reload. And now if we click on geolocation, it takes us to the page. Camera, let's add a little bit of content just to test it out. So all we have to do is go inside of this div here. And I'm going to do a little bit of formatting just so we can read this better. I want this up one. Alright, so we'll just say geo test. Save. Go back and reload. We click on geolocation, and there's our geotest. So that's all we need to do to add content to our pages is just put it inside of the panel div. So let's put this one down here. And I like to, when we have a lot of HTML like this, I like to label everything, especially the divs and the endings of the divs. Now this header here, we don't need to put anything in here because we have, for our panel, we have a title which automatically puts this inside the header. If we want, we could get rid of this title and just type main inside here, but I believe if we do that, then every page will say main. So we're just going to leave the header there for now. But I just want to end all my divs. Alright, so let's see. We get this, the panel, which is this div. Whoop. So I'm just going to copy this little snippet, and this is a panel. This here is the container div. And let's see, this is the geolocation. Camera. You don't need to add this little slash either. I just like to use that. This is for the nav bar. Let's see. Oh, and part of it, with the app framework, we need this ID of AFUI. Alright, so that's at the app framework user interface. We need to have this div wrap around everything in our application if we want to use the app framework, which I'll explain in a few minutes. So the last div is that AUFI. This header stuff here, we actually don't need that. I just want to clean up things a little. There we go. If you're using NetBeans, a really great tool is the formatter. You can format the code with Shift-Alt-F and it'll all line up nicely. So that's one of the reasons that I prefer NetBeans. Let's see, let's just get things a little bit closer. This content div, let's see, that ends right here. Another great feature about NetBeans is you can highlight one div and it automatically shows you its ending div, which is usually right. Okay, I think that's all the divs. Alright, so let's format this a little better. Now we have some style sheets here, and this is the style sheets for the app framework, which shouldn't have an ending tag, and we should just do this. That'll stop that NetBeans error. And let's copy these, or cut them actually, and put them up here with the rest of the CSS stuff, even though we don't have any yet. We don't need this meta tag either, this pragma meta tag, so we can actually just replace that with the CSS. Now this piece of JavaScript is the main XDK JavaScript, and like I said before, it used to be called AppMobi, so all the files and the APIs are still using AppMobi. That's why you see these. Okay, bring that up. And you don't have to. You could leave your document how it is, but I just like to clean everything up. So I'm going to take this JavaScript, which is the main app framework JavaScript file. I'm going to put that up here. Alright. Now you can see we have a script block here, and then we have one here. I'm just going to get rid of this and just make it all one big script. And I'm actually going to take this stuff, because this is pretty much the app framework config. So I'm going to take all that, cut it, and I'm going to put it right. We actually don't want it in the on device ready function, which ends here. So I'm going to put it right after. Okay. Let's see. All right, looks good. And this error here is complaining because we have a selected attribute on our div, which I guess you're not supposed to have, but the framework wants you to have it on the main page, but we don't need it. It works. It'll work without it. So I'm gonna get rid of that just because that error is gonna bother me. So let's save this and make sure that we didn't break anything. All right. We can still go to our pages. All right, now one configuration for the app framework that you can add is to have this back button always say back, because I don't want it to say main. It just looks a lot better if it says back. So we can do that right in our configuration. Let's just go right under the theme, and we want a $ UI dot, and then we're going to use back button text is going to equal, and now you don't have to put back here, you could put anything, but back is the most logical. So let's save that and make sure that went through. So now our little button here says back. And there's a few other cool things you can do with the app framework. You should probably check out the API, the documentation. Alright, so it's Intel's app framework, and let's see. This part of it, AFUI, there's some really cool things you can do as far as page layouts, panels. Now when you have a panel, which we're using for our pages, you have a bunch of attributes you can use, and you can have it pop up in a model. You can change the headers, footers, navs, but one thing that's really cool is you can add this function here, this attribute of data load, and when you enter that page, it'll load whatever function you put here. So let me show you. Let's go to our geolocation panel. That's the link. So here is our panel, it's our geolocation panel, and I'm just going to add this attribute onto the end. And I'm going to change this to a function that I want to run. So I'm going to call it enter geo. And that's the data load. We can also have data unload, which will happen when you leave the page. So we'll change that to exit geo. And then we can go up here in our script and create a function called enter geo. And let's also, actually, we're just going to alert entering geolocation, and we'll copy this, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Alright, so these are two functions. I'm just going to add just going to do an alert. Let's go back here, reload. and if we click on geolocation, we get our pop-up. We go to the page. When we leave, we get our pop-up and we leave the page. So that's really useful. I think that's one of the coolest things about this framework. And there's just a whole bunch of cool things you can do. So yeah, I mean, take a look at the documentation down here. UI Quick Start. They give you pretty much a boilerplate template to create your own layout. So that's going to be it for this section. And what I'm going to do here is just get rid of these functions, the geolocation functions, because we're actually going to work from this document. Let's see, we want to remove both of these functions, and we just want a blank, kind of a clean slate to work with. And we'll see if we can work on the geolocation using, I mean, I know we use geolocation with PhoneGap, but it's a little different with Intel XDK or AppMobi. Basically they're the same thing, and you know, it's pretty similar. We use the on-device ready function when everything's loaded up. We can use APIs using AppMobi, so we'll get into that.